broadcasting live from our studio in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core.
Got a really great show today. I don't want to waste any time, so I want to introduce our special co-host for the evening. Mm-hmm. She is the Director of Marketing and Community Engagement for the Mile Music Festival. I'd like to welcome Kim Mauthe. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Thanks for doing this. And Mile has been very busy this year getting ready for this PBS Wisconsin documentary called Mile of Music, which hopefully is going to bring a lot more people to Mile of Music this year.
Yeah, we're definitely hopeful that the documentary will bring more music fans to the area and people who really want to come and discover their next favorite band.
And I'm really, again, glad that you're here because you're going to be able to provide some color to some of the things we're going to talk about. I'd like to introduce our next guest. He's the lead producer of the incredible PBS Wisconsin documentary Mile of Music, showcases the annual Appleton Festival. It officially premieres on PBS next week, but there was a special showing last night in Appleton. It's also available early on the PBS website, along a lot of bonus content. I'd highly suggest you check it out. I'd like to welcome Colin Crowley to Fox Cities Core on Code Zero Radio. How are you doing, Colin?
Hey, Andy. I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
What a night last night.
It was crazy.
How many people do you think showed up to see the premiere?
I'm not always the best at estimating crowds, but I'm thinking based on our registration and walk-ins, we were at about 600, which was awesome showing, especially for a summer Monday night.
Is that about what was expected as far as the turnout?
I think so. Yeah, I think we were really happy with the crowd that was there, and everyone was super engaged with the program, too.
And just to fill everybody in on how the showing went last night, it was in the Appleton Exhibition Center, the biggest space in that building. I've never been in there before, but I was pretty impressed. 2 huge screens, very nice screens, very nice sound system.
Yeah.
And to see this documentary in that kind of setting with that kind of sound, with everybody there as well. There was lots of familiar faces from the Mile team and just faces that you see every year at Mile of Music. It was just a special time.
I agree, and I'm glad to hear that from your perspective, too. So
let's talk briefly about, Colin, your history. When did you get into film? And let us know how you got to this point.
Yeah, well, I started doing photography when I was 15 years old, and this was in the early 90s. So before digital, any of that, I was doing film back before it was cool to do film. We just shot on film because that's all there was. And so I always shot photographs. And then around 2004, the digital revolution just happened. And all of a sudden, anybody could buy a camera. You could build a PC and get a pirated copy of Final Cut or Adobe Premiere and just start making your own videos. So I'd always wanted to do that, but I didn't go to film school. I didn't go to broadcast or anything. I had a degree in French. So I just decided, hey, I want to get into video. So I started doing that and combined that kind of with travel and foreign language and ended up first starting out shooting, a lot of music around the Fox Valley. I was living in Oshkosh for a couple years. And then I ended up living overseas. I lived in Kenya in East Africa for 10 years and kind of worked as a multimedia producer for an aid organization. But having always been interested in music, one of the things I would do is seek out traditional musicians in Africa and go make little multicam field recordings of them. So it's if I was on a trip to Rwanda, I would ask friends in Rwanda, hey, do you know any traditional musicians? And they'd set me up with a guy and I'd meet up with him, film him. If I was in a refugee camp in South Sudan, I would seek out if there were any musicians in the community and find them and make films of them and just put them on YouTube for no commercial purpose or anything. But again, this, something I'm really interested in is why people create in the first place, because music is often done just for the joy of doing it, without a commercial purpose. And it's as a visual artist, it's really fun to collaborate with musicians and give visual form to what they do.
Then eventually you got involved with PBS Wisconsin through our mutual friend Andy Moore.
That's correct. Yeah. I moved back to the U.S. to Wisconsin in 2017. Had a couple of like commercial video jobs that didn't agree with me. And then there was an opening at PBS Wisconsin for their cultural affairs unit for a multimedia producer. So I called up Andy, who I played music with and just knew, and he kind of gave me some tips. And I applied and got the job, and that led to what I do today.
And not only is Andy a coworker, you also joined a band with him called Band Jovi.
That was the original poorly chosen name.
And then was it Disaster?
Disaster Passport is what we're called now. Yeah, and we play like 2 shows a year. It's kind of like a hobby type music project that we do together.
So the love of the banjo kind of united you and Andy, as well as a love for film and telling stories.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So Disaster Passport, I have to ask.
Okay.
When is the next show?
September in Viroqua at the Driftless bookstore.
Were you a fan of 30-Minute Music Hour?
Definitely. So I used to watch 30-minute music hour when I lived overseas. It was like a way to keep in touch with the Wisconsin music community. So Pudge played on 30-minute, Cribs Hitter played, all sorts of different Wisconsin bands that I would follow.
Yeah, and that was what a great thing for Andy to spearhead there. That I'd watch that as well and find out bands that were from Madison and Milwaukee and all these different places.
Yeah, the 30-minute music hour is kind of like the godfather of this Mile of Music project, because it was really PBS Wisconsin getting into this practice of filming live music, like multicam live music performances.
So your job at PBS Wisconsin for a while was Farm to Table?
Around the Farm Table. Yeah, I was the producer of that show for about 3 years.
I believe that actually won a Chicago Midwest Emmy.
Yeah, won a couple. We got James Donovan was my partner on that, and we shared an Emmy for editing and photography, along with our colleague Ethan Friel, and then another one for directing. And James was also the editor of the Mile of Music piece, so he and I have kind of a working relationship where we have like language between us, where we know what the other one's thinking, and we kind of have a way of filming together and editing together that works out really well.
We had a comment from Melissa. Noticed your T-shirt, so
yeah,
it's a classic T-shirt. And you're from Beloit, but you spent quite a bit of time in Oshkosh. So what bands were you introduced to during your time in Oshkosh?
So I was in Oshkosh from 2004 to 2007. So that was when the Willis was going, which later it was an early incarnation of Redshift Headlights. My brother's band, the Lemurs, best punk band in Wisconsin. And Drop Dead Giant, Happy was around at the time. Aaron Bear was doing cool stuff with Dr. Kickbutt's Orchestra of Death. There was just this very fertile scene of musicians and artists kind of based around the downtown of Oshkosh that I was lucky enough to be a part of.
Oshkosh does have a pretty vibrant scene that still continues to this day.
Yeah, and a lot of people, several people from that scene, like I actually got to film at Mile of Music last year. Like Joe Slazelia is in the Tunes. And then I knew Brandon Domer back in the day. He's in Traveling Suitcase. So it was cool to see Redshift Headlights too. So it was cool to see all of them almost 20 years later.
So can you tell me how the whole idea for a documentary about Mile of Music came about?
Do you want to start a little bit from a Mile perspective?
Yeah. So my first, actually, Colin and I were just talking about this recently. My first email back and forth with Colin was in 2019. So to put the scope of this project together, I don't think it was ever intended to be a 6-year project, but we all know that 2020 happened, so I think that kind of tabled things. It really started with Dawn Nowakowski, who used to work for PBS Wisconsin, who's based in Appleton. She kind of kickstarted the conversation about it, pitching it, and then, you guys came up and scouted in 19. A couple of you came up in 21. And then again in 23. So it's definitely been a process over the years, but it's been great to work with you all and, really get the you guys to see the vision of Mile of Music and obviously now see the full program.
Yeah, we came up, again, my colleagues James and Deb Piper came up in 2019, and Dawn welcomed us and kind of like worked things out, got us badges so we could walk around. And James and I just kind of floated up and down College Avenue with no plan and a couple of cameras, and just figured that was where we got the vibe of what Mile is. And it's that there's no headliner, there's no one star. It's what the defining characteristic is the variety, and it's the variety of experience, variety of venue, variety of genre, and that any festival goer can just kind of go and bounce around venue to venue. So the idea coming out of it was like, well, what if we could recreate that experience with, small camera crews that could go into small venues. And the one sticking point was like, well, how are you going to get good audio in that many venues? So that's another story. But we have a couple audio engineers who joined us a couple years later, and they kind of came up with a plan they built a little mobile recording studios that could fit in a Pelican case, and they could just wheel from venue to venue. And they just took a USB out. I'm simplifying it, right? But they took a USB out of the boards, and then they streamed multi-track recordings into a digital audio workspace and recorded every track. So like every guitar, every microphone, every drum mic, the bass, whatever instruments, they could split those all out. And then they also added their own crowd mics, which meant they could take each performance into post and mix and master it the same way you do a studio recording.
So it actually almost comes out sounding better than it did at the festival in a way.
I'm not going to say that,
great.
But yeah, I mean, the idea was you know how it is, like we've all filmed on a cell phone and you're there and you're like, this sounds great. And then you watch it at home and it's just garbled junk audio. So the idea was you have to like break it down into its parts and then reassemble it in post in order to like recreate the feeling of what it sounds like when you're there.
I think a little bit, and obviously I'm not a sound person, but part of what you knew was going to be a challenge, I think, was that all the venues are so different, and not every venue is normally a music venue. So you're talking all different types of acoustics, all different types of crowds. But I think your team did an amazing job.
Yeah, I do too, and all that credit goes to Andrew LaValle and Zach Seeger, our audio engineers.
Was there any specific venue that you can remember that you walked into and maybe looked at it and thought, "There's no way that we're going to be able to film in here"?
I'd never say you can't. Everyone's just a challenge for me. It's just like, oh, let me sink my teeth into this challenge. I think the hardest ones were probably like the rooms in the Hilton. Because they don't look like music venues. Like Tall Trees made a joke. He's like, "Oh, welcome to the psychedelic banjo sales conference," because it's like these are rooms
it's a hotel ballroom.
Yeah, these are rooms that are usually hosting like professional seminars and stuff. But I think one of our crews came out of filming in the Evergreen, and they said like, we just don't think we got it. It's really dark. It's kind of packed. But then when we looked at the footage, we're like, no, this is great. This is what Mile of Music is. It's like you're taking anything becomes a venue. So you're taking a room in the basement of a hotel, and all of a sudden it becomes this like place that can host a magic moment of a band playing in there.
I thought that it was really well done as far as telling the story from the eyes of the attendees, the Mile crew, and the artists themselves. Was the idea that ended up being the documentary similar to what the original idea was as far as telling that story?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I probably in earlier incarnations probably thought there would be more like behind the scenes documentary storytelling, and we tried a bit of that in early edits. But then what we found was that the performances are the story. So it's just like and when you're dealing with a set time limit with broadcast, in our case, 56 minutes, 46 seconds, everything you add, you have to take something else out. And everything you take out, you have to add something more in. So the more talking we had meant the less music we could fit. And our goal was to show as many musicians and as many performances as possible. So the way to do that was to just pull out a lot of the talking that we had in earlier edits and by doing that, it just kind of like opened up the energy of the edit and let things flow. And also, I don't know, have you ever watched a music documentary and they're like, oh, this is the Clash in the 1970s. And they'll show like 20 seconds of the Clash live. And then we'll go back to some talking head talking about why the Clash was so influential. And you're like, can you just take me back to the Clash playing? Because like, I want to see that. So our approach was just let people watch the performance. Let them sit in the performance.
I think it was I'm biased, obviously, but I think it was a perfect balance of all of that, where you got the behind the scenes of our team, the artists. I thought the artist interviews were really great too.
Was 55 minutes the agreed time originally for it? When was it decided that it would be 55?
Well, an hour long was agreed upon because it's the broadcast standard. We have half-hour time slots, so we generally, a half hour is too short. An hour and a half is hard to fit into a programming schedule, and it also is a lot more resources. So we generally land on an hour for projects like this. And then 46 is the PBS standard for the hour time slot.
And when did you get the first view of this? Were you getting sent clips during the process?
A little bit. So Melissa from our team and I actually went down a few days after the festival, because the PBS team wasn't sick of us by that point. And that was really cool because we got to see your space, which you had seen so much of our space. So that was really neat to just kind of see. And by that point, I don't think you had really
It was just raw footage.
Yeah,
it was just like, hey, do you want to see a bunch of raw footage?
It gave me a lot of appreciation for how you were going to make this work, because even just seeing the like 10 seconds of footage that I was seeing, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be quite the project. We saw it as a team at the beginning of May. So it was just our Mile team, which was really special. And Colin came up, gave us a presentation about kind of how it worked and the production and some of the decisions. Kind of a small scale version of the screening that we did last night. We did a little Q&A, but that was really, really cool to all be able to see it, kind of more intimately together.
And I was nervous to show them.
And I don't know why, but I get it. I would be too.
Because we had worked, they're our partner, they're not our client.
Yeah.
Right? They're and we were very careful to kind of keep a firewall editorially between them, because we have to do what we do independently without their input.
Yep.
But then at the same time, we've partnered with them for 5 years. I wanted to make something that they were proud of. It would have been, it would have sucked for me if I had showed it to them and they were like, we wish you would have done it in a different way. So
and I think there was a little bit of that in we loved the documentary, but I think, right away, of course, we're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And so it was really good to get those questions answered of why certain things were taken out. But those are just things that we're not producers. We don't know those things.
And a year is a long time to wait and build up expectations and imagine what it might be like. So.
But yeah, we absolutely love it, and we're really happy with how it turned out.
We had a question here. How many total hours of video did you end up with?
I have no idea. I can tell you I think in like, well, let's break it down. Okay, so let's say we shot just our field crews. So this is excluding our truck production, which was a sort of like separate but related project. We shot 28 shows in 3 days. Each show is 50 minutes long, and each show had 3 to 5 cameras. So let's say one show with 5 cameras, that's like 4+ hours of footage. Now multiply that by 28. And that's just performances. And then we had B-roll, we had interviews.
Yep.
And then the truck shot 5 shows in two venues, so 10 shows over the course of 2 days. And they probably had like 10 cameras on each, so... But I have the drive we're working off of is 14 terabytes. So we have all our raw footage on a 14 terabyte drive. And and James and I just each had our own that was mirrored, and we were editing off those.
I'm going to ask about like what it was like to go through that, but I've got to know, like, I should ask you to set up, like, how big was the PBS crew that was working, and how was it broken down to make sure that everybody was covering what they needed to cover?
So what we call the field crews, and that's the product that you see in the broadcast documentary, We were 3 teams, so 2 teams of 4 people, and then a team of 3 people. So the team of 3 people, led by Emily Jolka, they were what we called like the documentary. So they were going around getting B-roll, getting people on the street, trying to interview artists, all the things the performance crews couldn't. And then the other 2 crews were, like I said, 3 to 4 cameras, sometimes 5 if we were able to share around. We each had a schedule where we were each shooting about 5 shows per day. And we would time it out, we would take into account distance and logistics, how are we going to get from here to there, and also looking at the mile schedule, trying to figure out how do we represent a variety of genre, a variety of musicians, and a variety of venues was really important. I wanted to show all the as many different types of venues. So then we just kind of like leapfrogged each other in the schedule. We'd be filming over here, they'd be filming over there, and then we switch. So 5 shows each, that's 10 a day.
Was the whole PBS crew in the same hotel?
Yes. Yeah. And we had the same like little HQ room that we would all meet up in like at the beginning of each day.
So that's a lot of footage to get, a lot of planning. Did everything that needed to come up here to Appleton to film this, did everything make it up here?
It did, yeah. And then, the other thing I should mention is our colleague Josh Kapler, who was an editor, producer, videographer. He was our on-site media manager. So do you know like when you make a bank deposit, like those little zipper bags? I bought about a dozen of those off of Amazon, and we would shoot, and then our project manager, Sam Nash, would go around. Everybody would throw their memory card in the bag, would zip it up, and then she would ferry it back to Josh, and he brought a PC that was built specifically for this up to Mila Music, and he would ingest it, match everything by time code, and build the multicam sequences like minutes after we shot them. So then we could just go back in late August and just open up the project and start cutting.
How did you decide what bands and artists you were going to film?
We took a dartboard. It was a mix of, okay, we started out, there were certain acts where we know we got to get this person. Some of the bigger ones, I think, for Mile, and that were known entities. So like Joy Clark, she's just going to have a perfect performance. Tall, Tall Trees, I think people were excited about. Bandits on the Run, Jeremy Albino, Illiterate Light, I'm sure I'm missing. Those were just some that hit certain things for us.
Yep.
And then a lot of the rest was where do we have an opening in the schedule, and who's playing and where are they playing? So imagine you have this opening, there's 30 different shows happening. One is can we make it physically in that time? Are they playing in a venue that we've already filmed in? So that might cancel that out. Do they represent a genre or a type of music that we haven't got? So it was just this whole puzzle of trying to put things together, knowing that, there's going to be disappointments. There's going to be great acts that we just simply can't get around to. And sometimes things aren't going to work out. Maybe things just aren't working. Maybe we weren't able to get there and set up the right camera angles or whatever. But it was a mix of planning and luck and just whatever the circumstances dictated.
Which I think kind of mirrors how we make the schedule. And you were a little bit of that process too, or got to see a little bit of that process. But, there's so much that goes into scheduling where you want to have the vibe be appropriate at the different stages. And then, not that I want to talk about weather, but I know you guys had to think about, well, what if it rains? And that's obviously something that we have to think about as well.
Yeah, we got rained out on Thursday afternoon and missed several outdoor shows that we would have loved to have had. That, in the edit, we're it would have been great to have Basil and the Super Nationals at Houdini Plaza, but they were rained out. So.
Yep.
Did you let the artists know that they were going to be one of the filmed featured artists prior to showing up to play?
We did. Because we have certain release forms that we just had to have them sign, and we thought rather than tugging on their arm backstage before the show, we're let's contact them in advance. So we contacted more artists than we ended up filming, and we kind of made it clear, it's this isn't a guarantee we're going to film you, but if we're in a position to do it, are you okay with that? And everybody was more than happy to.
How did the release work for people attending those shows? Did you have to post a sign that said you might be on film?
Yeah.
Yep. And then we had to post on our website as well.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a question here. With all those shows recorded, did any of the bands request the footage? Is there any chance those could be shown in the future on PBS?
No one requested them. The way we work for legal reasons, there's just copyright issues that prevent us from sharing them out. So our effort in that direction was to edit together 9.5 separate hours of footage and put that out. And if it's not up there, there's a reason for it. It's like maybe maybe you had a great performance and we were there, but something went wrong on our end. So the short answer is we can't share that footage directly. So our response to that was like, we're going to edit together the best performances that we can and put them out there. And then you can share them as an artist with your following.
Well, and the bonus content that's online, after watching the showing yesterday in Appleton, I went home and binged a bunch of the stuff on there because you get more of the performance. And there were some songs in the film that looked like the whole song was on there, and then there was others where there was some editing going on. Who was in charge of editing down a song to make it sound natural and not abruptly all of a sudden changing?
That was myself and James Donovan, and we had filmed a previous music documentary about high school vocal groups, and we got pretty good at that. But James is a musician. I'm a musician. Any editor generally works with like music tracks where you get a feel for like, okay, I can like, there's a clean cut at the end of this verse that I could lead into a bridge that only that happens a minute later in the song, but you cut that, and then editing is sleight of hands, like cut to this camera angle at the same time you cut the music so that the audience doesn't feel. So I think every single performance you see in the concert documentary is edited down. Because and again, it was just so we could get as many artists in as possible. We tried to average about 2 minutes per performance.
It felt very natural, though. I mean, at least in my opinion, I think, like you said, Andy, it's hard to tell, where they cut, which is, I mean, the whole point.
And then again, if you want to see that full extended performance, those are all out on the website.
I was really impressed with the fact that you get the feeling of attending the festival because you're going into places that you're not focusing on just the Houdini plazas. You're going into all these different spots and you put where they are.
Yeah.
Like the location. So people that are thinking about attending the festival or might be watching this and think, well, this year I want to make sure that I go to this venue to see that. And I thought that was so cool that you listed the venue as well as the artist.
Well, the venues are characters in themselves, aren't they? Like if you see, let's say you see Valley Fox at Harper Hall or you see them at Chadwick's, those are two different experiences.
Yep, different shows.
Yeah, so again, like variety of venue was really important for us for that reason, because the venue also like lends to the vibe just like the music does.
Kim, were you nervous about getting filmed for this and what you were going to say?
A little bit. I remember we did our interviews. It's like May.
Yeah, we did
last
it
year,
about
a little bit earlier.
2 months before the festival.
And I wasn't nervous until we did them at Gibson until I got there. And Colin said, okay, I'm going to ask you the hardest question first, which is my name. And I had just recently gotten married and I said my maiden name and I was like, wait a minute, it's not my name anymore. But no, I don't get too nervous, but I was curious what was going to be used in the end. And I was happy with most of what I said. So
next, we talked to each Mile member about anywhere from like 20 to 40 minutes.
Yep.
And then, and then in the edit, we're just going through that, mining it for, I don't like the word sound bites, but like for the sequences, where the things they say that we can then use to kind of build the script.
I thought the stuff you used was great, and I'm sure a lot of the Mile team might have said similar things, but the way you edited, you took a piece from each person, like Melissa Freeman and your father Dave and Ian Thompson. Like everybody said something that I thought really added to the story, and it really went in well with what the artists were saying. You talked about all the different programs that are available, all the different things that artists can get here. There's opportunities for children to play instruments and old people. But it was just really well done. It flowed really nicely, and the 55 minutes went really fast.
Right. That's always my impression, even as the editor, as the co-editor. Like, I would watch it and I felt like, did that just go too fast? Or I don't know.
How many times do you think you've seen it, Colin?
So let me tell you, I watch with every show I make, I watch it towards the end. I watch it with the sound off because I'm looking for like visually, like how does this flow visually? And the last time I watched it with the sound off, I could hear every quote, every bit of music. I knew everything Kim was saying. I had the entire show memorized in my head, like every music note, every transition. So I've watched it a lot, but like seeing it last night was like watching it for the first time again because I'm seeing it with people who are seeing it for the first time. And we always laugh as editors, like there's things we put in there because we thought it was funny or we thought it was cool. But we've seen it 1,000 times, so it stopped being funny for us. It just started being a technical. And then you'd play it and people will laugh and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That part's really funny. I hadn't thought about it being funny for 6 months now.
Right.
There were a bunch of laughs yesterday.
I
wish I could remember where they were, but it
Well, it's like Max from Diet Light saying like, I got a massage on the company dime. We're playing with house money. I texted him today. I was like, hey, big laughs on that line, dude.
Well, and Diet Light was a surprise for you. That was your first time seeing them.
It was.
Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah. So we had chosen them because we knew we needed, this is not like disparaged, but this was the terms we used, like we need a dirty rock band in a dirty rock club. And I don't mean
about what Melissa said.
Yeah, so. I don't mean like unclean. I mean like we need a gritty, like, so we had kind of scouted them. We show up at Chadwick's. We're in the back getting set up, and some van pulls up, and it's like classic rock band van about to fall apart. And they're like, do you know where we can park? And we're like, yeah, you can park right over there. Are you the band? We're like, yeah. They come out, and I was kind of in awe because just like that's my type of music. And I was like, 25-year-old me is really psyched right now. And that was 20 years ago, right? And then they were the coolest dudes. They're like, yeah, you can come up on stage, do whatever. And then before the show, like they started doing calisthenics and stretching backstage. And I was like, are these guys joking around? Like, what's going on? And then they come on stage, you're like, oh, that's why they had to stretch their hamstrings because they're doing like jump kicks off the amps. And the drummer like gets up, Evan just like whips his shirt off. And James and I were in the front row. Our colleague Mike was in the back, Lean on the side. And they just came out and gave the greatest show, like just so dynamic. And we were able to film it in a way where you break all the rules. You're just like, you're not worried about keeping the camera steady. You're just moving with them, doing whip hands, like reacting to the music with the camera. And yeah, I'm really proud of the way that came out because when you think of PBS, like you don't think of a band like that in a venue like that. And I think it's like perfect. Well,
the flow of that worked as well because you started it off with some of the more acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, which is what you would typically experience if you're going to Mile Early, and then you kind of get eased into some of the loud rock band stuff.
Starts getting dark. College Avenue starts getting crazy. You pop into the Bent Keg, you pop into Chadwick's.
That's exactly how you experience it as a fan too. So,
have either of you been getting any feedback that you'd like to mention, either good or bad, from the showing last night? Because you've probably been waiting for people to see this for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably been more antsy than I have, but like since we saw it as a team, I've just been like waiting for the public screening. And people were so gracious last night, and just I've gotten texts during the thing last night, like this is amazing. So so hopefully you've gotten some of that as well. But all the feedback has been really positive.
I think somebody at Gibson last night said, I really like how you kept the energy going throughout, because that's what we were trying to do in the edit. And early drafts, we weren't able to do that. Like you'd get to about minute 35 and the energy would just drop. And we had to do a lot of work, just like with sequencing and, like I said before, pulling out some of those interviews that were like people said really great things that we hated to cut, but just they had to go in order to keep the flow. Moving things around so that sequence felt like it was building up. So that was happy for me to hear. And again, going into Last night, I'm always nervous when people use this term documentary because that can bring a lot of expectations. Like, is this like an in-depth analysis of what makes Mile of Music run, like how it's financed, how it's set up? And it's like, it's a concert film first and foremost. So I was hoping people would be receptive to that, and they were.
You did a question and answer last night, which was interesting and fun to watch, and it was brief.
Yeah.
But you had some great questions during that, and one of them was, do you wish you could have told the stories of the artists or had the artists tell their stories? And you also had a question from Scott Peoples, who, of course, goes to all the Mile of Musics. He puts out a list every year of, who you should go see and what his schedule is. Have you been talking to a lot of people like this that are just Mile of Music is that one weekend a year that is circled 3 times on their calendar?
Yes,
they're not going to miss it no matter what.
Yeah, even at the festival last year, we were talking to them. I was like the first night we were getting dinner in Basil's, is it? That has the great sandwiches that night.
Yep.
And there was like a couple, like 2 couples, retirement age, and they were just jazzed. And so I walked up and talked to them, and they're like, let me tell you, and they got their spreadsheets and all that. And it's like, yeah, this is amazing. There's so many super fans.
Kim, from a Mile of Music side, what was the feeling like for the Mile team? Was there nervousness as far as giving PBS everything they needed to make this a success?
That's a really good question. I don't think I ever felt that, especially like after meeting all of you. I actually was telling someone last night that when you all had started emailing, I think it was Steve Doble had emailed in like mid-July of 2023, coming up for like what ended up being the final scout before you guys pitched the program. And he's like, hey, we're going to have 10 of us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? You're going to have 10 people here in 2 weeks? Okay. But we made it work. And I think many of us on the team have seen the programming that you do. And I think we just knew that whatever it was going to be great. And I'm not just saying that. I never felt nervous about it.
Yeah, and we go into these, something like this, we're just like, this is going to be controlled chaos. Like, there's no way you can plan for everything. And there were certain things on our list was like, capture moments that happen. So it's not like you can say like, hey, if at 3:30 at the 5:13, there's going to be this tender moment between, a couple in the crowd.
Right.
We just, our goal is just like, put yourself in those situations, keep your eyes open, and do what you do best. And we have this crew of videographers who know how to do that.
Yeah. So. You guys did an amazing job. And I think that's a great question, though, because, I really can't think of a single time that I was nervous about.
And they gave us everything we needed. It's like super clear communication with the venues beforehand, these like badges that just were like all access passes. And then again, like we should really extend credit to the venues themselves.
Yeah.
They made everything happen for us.
Yep.
When you're walking into a crowded place with 80 pounds of gear and like they're trying to run a business, they're trying to put on a good thing for their customers. They could have taken a different attitude towards us. We're like, hey, you guys are kind of ruining things for us.
Right.
And it was the opposite. They were just like, welcome in. What do you need? Extra access.
I'm glad to hear that.
I got to the Stone Arch late because I was coming from somewhere else. And it was in the tap room. And the line, there was like 40 people outside of the venue peeking in. And I had to get up to the front row with a camera. And I'm like, how am I going to bump past 80 people? And then I just like ran out the back door and like came in the back of the kitchen. I was like, hey, there's like, come in, get in here. And they like ushered me right up to the front of the stage.
Yeah, the venues are amazing. And I think they all were so excited to hear about this project too, that I think it made it a lot easier for them to be like, yeah, come on in, let's do it.
As far as the footage of the crowd watching the performances, that is great too, because that's just as exciting as watching the bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a team or a person that was responsible for getting those crowd shots, or
it was just a shared responsibility? It's like everybody kind of, their assignment was take the audience inside the performance, but that also means showing when I say audience, I mean viewing audience. So like create a visual of these that capture moments, not just the performer. And part of Mile of Music is that barrier between performer and audience breaks down. So we were very mindful to get those shots of audience members. And yeah, those are some of my favorite things. They're little details, like I've mentioned this one before, like a woman sits down next to her husband with 2 beer bottles in her hand, hands him one, they give a little cheers, so and then launch into the show.
Yep.
So, and then, you know, the audience too was really great because we were there and our goal was to not impede their, you know, experience at all. So everybody was fine, like, oh, can I set my camera here? Is that okay? And people would make space for us, give us a helping hand. It was good all around.
Any surprises as far as things that you mentioned getting rained out, but any surprises as far as film when you're watching it later that you didn't realize happened at the time until you were viewing?
I'm sure there were. I think it's just, I've seen so much now. It's like, it's hard to pick through the 100 hours of film.
It's a good time for this question then. Yeah. So you got the film, you've got all of it. How do you go about it? Because it probably felt good to get all those shows filmed, but what was the feeling of how are you going to tackle this? Did you have a...
So show by show, James and I just each split up the shows and would go through, first just watch all of them on the kind of multicam monitor, so where you're seeing all 5 camera views, and then picking out what we'd call selects. So like, what are the best performances, not just from the performer, but from us? Where were we really in sync, like with all our cameras, and when does that match up with a great performance? That also, like, you know, the song itself has a good vibe, because within a set, people will have upbeat numbers, they'll have, you know, slower numbers. So with every set, there were usually about 2-3 songs that stood out. And then we would go and edit those, and then at one point, we strung all of those out on the timeline. And that was like 2 to 3 hours, maybe even 4 hours. And that was just raw performances. So then it was with those, we're like, okay, now let's divide the show up kind of by themes. So starting like, what is Mile of Music? And then what are listening rooms? Then we got to get into music education. And then we want to talk about variety. And then we want to talk about artist care. And then we want to talk about fan audience engagement. We want to talk about community.
In 55 minutes.
In 55 minutes, and then sequencing all those performances, like cherry picking the best ones and putting them in. And then we got all that, and we're still at like an hour 45.
Wow.
And then you just have to start compressing.
Was there any artists that completely got cut out?
No, I wouldn't say that. There were some where we were kind of like on the bubble where we just can't fit them in. But then that was the process of, okay, if we take out a bit more talking, we can fit this many more artists in.
Were there any situations where you had a great performance, bad video?
Yes.
Great video, bad performance?
More so the former. And because when we were going in, we didn't have a set plan. We were just reacting in every situation.
No headsets or anything to communicate?
No. We thought about that, but like, you imagine like 4 dudes in Chadwicks with headsets and a director trying to say like, get the guy jumping off the amp. It's like, you just have to go in and react to it.
So it was like you said, directions. You're going to get the front shots of the front of the band. You're going to get the side shots.
Yeah, a bit. It was, I mean, we never even talked about it. It would just kind of go in like, I'm going to be here. Okay, I'm here. Someone would sit back and with a tripod and get the safety shot. But it's funny, like, one thing about PBS Wisconsin, we have a lot of talented people who know how to do a lot with a little. And everybody has their own style. And it was funny, like, certain people would just gravitate to certain things. Like, my colleague Lena, she would never be up front. You'd never, like, where's Lena? And she'd always just be somewhere in the side, just getting this, like, beautiful, through the audience, through the amps shots. And then James Rundy, one of my directions was, take me inside the performance. I said that to everybody. James got, like, inside the performance, like, close-ups on the mouth, close-ups on hands, like, full screen. You see some of those in, like, the Rainbow Girls edit, where it's like, wow, like the whole frame is filled up.
That's awesome.
And then other people were good at just like taking the gimbal and moving it around, getting those fluid shots. So what you see is a combination of all these very talented, very dedicated people just like coming together and almost, like if you liken it to bands, like performing in their job together.
I think it's, and maybe we talked about this already, but the fact that you had, 40 or 45 people here that don't normally all work together. You're normally much more spread out. So, I mean, for me, I think that was a really cool part of the project was knowing that you guys were coming here and it was going to be a full team effort.
Yeah, for our field crew, at least, we're about 20. And the way we usually work for normal projects is a producer teams up with one videographer and they go off. So we all know each other. We all see each other in the edit suites, but we never get the chance to all work together. So this was the first time we did that. And then just like imagine getting to do that at the Mile of Music Festival. It was awesome. Everybody was like on a high all
Love
weekend.
it.
So is there anything you're working on currently? This project took you quite a while to complete. It's, I suppose you finished one thing, it's right on to a next.
Yeah, I'm working on a web series with a friend of mine named Nick Gulig, who was the poet laureate of the state of Wisconsin for a couple of years. And we're doing a short 6-part web series that kind of tells his story and digs into poetry. And it's very different than this. It's much more short episodes that do like a collage work that kind of explain to the audience about poetry and what it's like to be a poet.
And will that be on the PBS website?
It will be, yeah, coming in September.
Any chance that Mile of Music will get a feature again on PBS in the future?
No, because we like to spread it out.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think we generally do one thing and then move on to the next. And our goal is to create a body of work that represents like diversity of geography as well. So we like to really spread it out around the state as much as possible.
Kim, are you worried that when people see this film that the crowds coming to Mile of Music are going to get too big and it's going to move the festival to the next level?
We have talked about that, and I think that's a challenge that we've been facing even before this happened. But now knowing that this will get pushed out to a statewide audience, definitely have those concerns, but I think in a way it's definitely a good thing because we want to encourage more music fans to, make the drive here. We're, seeing it from areas like Milwaukee, Madison, but even getting more into like Eau Claire, Wausau. I mean, we're not picky if people want to come here. So I think it's great for the community regardless, but it is something we have to think about because, again, not to think about weather, but we do have to think about where do people go if it's not 75 degrees and sunny all weekend, which, the past few years it hasn't been. So
Appleton's going to turn into Woodstock. Right?
Yeah, oh gosh. Well, there we go. That's something.
I think the smallest venue featured in the film, was it Dr. Jekyll's?
Probably. We didn't film a multicam performance in there. I did pop in to get some B-roll.
It was so fun, like trying to, recognize each place, each venue. But it was nice that you also most of them posted.
There's also a little Easter egg on Sunday. The crews had to go home, but I ran up and down College Avenue with like a specific goal of getting Oshkosh bands, just for
I saw
B-roll.
Redshift headlights.
So we got Redshift, we got Present Age, we got Horace Green, and then I ran into the Traveling Suitcase guys like at the Horace Green show and kind of like talked to them.
That's awesome.
That's great. I love that. And then your local connection to the Fox Cities obviously made you a very authoritative person to have leading the crew as far as, who to film, where to go, and what to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say authoritative.
I'll say it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, for me, it's just being a music lover and being someone who has thought a lot about how to film live music and how to film musicians. That kind of prepared me for this.
Well, and you've done a lot of other stuff. You worked with Redshift Headlights when they went down to electrical audio.
I did,
in Chicago, one of Steve Albini's last projects. Tell me about that process.
So that was a personal project that wasn't PBS Wisconsin. Redshift Headlights posted on Facebook, hey, we're going down to record with Steve Albini. And as a joke, I posted a comment, if you guys need anybody to do photos and video, I'm your guy. Because it's like bucket list item, meet Steve Albini and film him. And they immediately got back to me. They're like, are you serious? Because we'll take you. And I was like, okay. you guys give me transport and feed me and a place to sleep, and I'm there. Like, so I did that and spent 2 days in that situation, and those guys are all good friends, so that was like a joy to do.
You know, Albini can be a little prickly, or you know, he had the reputation for being a little prickly. I believe Steve said that, you said you were going to be a fly on the wall or something, and Albini said something along the lines of, I've heard that before or something.
My first thing to Steve McCabe was like, you got to clear this with Steve Albini, because the last thing I need is like Steve Albini writing a blog post about this annoying photographer that came into his studio. And he wrote Steve Albini and just kind of McCabe came back to me some vague like, yeah, he says it's fine. Or he says these things tend to slow down the recording process, but it's your dime basically. So I'll be honest, in 2 days, I didn't say a word to Steve Albini. I was like, I'm not going to mess this up for these guys. I don't want to get in this guy's way. And yeah, Albini's like, yeah, I'm sure he'll be a fly on the wall. But which flies on the wall are actually kind of annoying. So, but I went down there, filmed them. That was cool. That was like a really fun thing to do.
What was the feeling like to just be in Albini's orbit?
I mean, I'm a 90s kid. Like, Albini's a legend, you know? So seeing this guy work, it's just, you're in the presence of this, like, legendary guy. So it was awesome. And also as a photographer, you get a feel over the years for who is and isn't comfortable having a camera right in their face. And he definitely did not give off the vibe, like, come put a camera right in my face. So I like kept my distance, you know, got my shots when I could and got out of the way.
That's cool, though.
And so everything you filmed, they used that for the If You're Around Still video. And then Steve took your footage and made a 40-minute kind of documentary of the process. What were your overall thoughts on Steve's final edit of the...
I thought it was great. My thought was better you than me, because I don't have time in my life to edit, 8 hours of footage together. And I think for Steve McCabe, he was like, I would love to take this footage. So I was like, here you go, bro, and gave him a hard drive with everything. So it was a really good arrangement, because editing's the hardest part of the process. So I was very glad to like do the filming, hand it over to them, and then let them make something they were proud of.
There's some really good lines from Albini in there, just lots of them. Like he mentions Steve's guitar playing, or it's just all you play. Like he's very matter of fact.
Yeah, no, he doesn't pull any punches. He's very straightforward.
He also did a video for Crib Sifter out of Madison.
Cribs Hitter, yes. Yeah, Cribs Hitter.
Crystal City, which if you haven't seen that band, they did a 30-minute music hour, which is on the top of my list for 30-minute music hours. Crib Sitter, like lots of things go wrong for Crib Sitter. It's great songs, but if you get a chance to catch them live, they're very entertaining.
Yeah.
Especially the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Carl's a friend. Christine, his wife, is a friend. And he texted me one day in the winter and said, hey, I've got this song. Would you want to make a video for it? So I was like, let me think about it. And I thought about it for a couple of days, and then I texted him this kind of treatment I had. And again, this was a project I did on my own time. So my goal with all my projects that I do outside of work is we have to do them fast, and we have to do them cheaply. And I don't take money for them. It's just like, we're just going to do this, and how can we do this as quick, be as creative as we can with as few resources as possible. So we shot that in a matter of hours over 2 days in the winter, and then just sat down together, cut it, and yeah, it comes out. I was really proud of that.
Some great acting in there as well.
Yeah, no, those two are stars. They're great.
So Carl he's in Disaster Passport with you and Andy, isn't he? And also Luke
Bassiner, yeah.
That's great. So, I mean, you really are, you're connected to the music community in more than one way.
I try to be. I mean, I'm not a professional musician. I'm like very much an amateur musician, but I like musicians. I like that human beings choose to create, given all the other things they could do. Like, there's something I think really inspiring and human about musicians doing what they do.
So besides Diet Light, were there any other artists at Mile Music that really got your attention that you weren't aware of prior?
Valley Fox was really
They're
impressive. Great. We got a really nice record of them, and then turned that into a 15-minute concert that goes on the web. All of them. Ben Mowana was great. I had talked to him before the festival. I mean, everybody that's in the show, you come out of as a fan.
And I'm a little more behind the scenes and stuff. So even watching this, I'm like, wow, I'm missing out on a lot of really great music. I mean, I listen to it on Spotify, but it's so different seeing it live.
Tall, Tall Trees is incredible. I'm a banjo player, so like seeing what he does with banjo is just like, wow. Illiterate Light was a band that it's two guys and they just sound like they're six guys on stage somehow. Everybody, and then just some of those performances, Joy Clark just comes out and is like so great at what she does, hits every note, awesome guitar player. Everybody in the show and in the web extras is, you end up being a fan of.
Kim, how many bands do you get to see a typical mile?
It kind of depends. And as long as everything's going well, I kind of try to take the last few hours of the night and, park myself at Lawrence Lawn or Houdini or Jones or wherever. By that point in the night, I'm usually not into like trying to get into Chadwick's or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I usually see 4 or 5 bands throughout the weekend, but I also like to just kind of pop around to different venues, see a couple songs. Okay, great. Go to the next one. So full sets versus not, I mean, that's up for debate.
Colin, is there a place people can go to find your personal work as well as the stuff that's on PBS Wisconsin?
The short answer is no. I don't have a personal website or anything. I'm on YouTube at New Beat Photo as one word. And I'm on Instagram at Disaster Passport. But you're just as likely to see some, maybe I like shot something of my plants in the backyard or my kids, it's not like, but it's something, it's kind of like a long-term goal, like the cobbler's, never works on his own shoes. Like I'm always working on other people's projects. So, it's hard for me to find time to like put them all together.
So besides the Redshift headlights and the crib sitter, have you done other music videos?
I did 2 hip hop videos in Kenya. In Nairobi, there was a guy I'm friends with, Noah. He goes by GBO, and he came to me and was like, hey, I heard you do video. Do you want to make a music video? And I'd never done a music video. So I was like, sure. So I did like 2 hip hop music videos that are online.
That's
that
awesome.
You can find. If you look up GBO, like just the initials, GBO Kenya, you'll see them out there.
Is there anything you want to end the interview with? Any message to the Appleton Mile of Music crew or, the fans or anybody that is thinking about seeing this film?
Yeah, well, I would, of course, I'm biased. I think you're biased too for the program, but it's a great program. And especially whether you've been to Mile or if you haven't been, it's a great overview of what the festival is. And then, of course, there's the 9.5 hours of additional footage. So certainly have some things to keep yourself busy with before the festival starts in just a few weeks.
I would say this, it's like a technical note that not a lot of people know about. So it's going to broadcast on, live TV on Monday, June 23rd at 8. But look, like a lot of our generation, we don't sit down and watch appointment television. So it's also online. But what a lot of people don't know is on your smart TV, there's a PBS app. You can just go and search the PBS app, and it's free. And it works just like any other streaming app like Netflix or HBO, and you have all this PBS content. So download that app on your TV and just search, and once you're in the PBS app, search Mile of Music, and the full concert documentary and all the supplemental performances are there. So if you have a really good sound system in your house with your TV, like you don't have to watch it on a laptop or on a phone. Go watch it on your TV with a really good sound system, and you're going to hear how good the sound mixes are on this, and you can see it on a big screen. So I would strongly recommend people make an effort to watch it that way. You'll get the full experience.